quick question.
Yes.
Is there added benefit to doing the exercise out of trance versus in?
I guess you're really engaging them a lot, you know, asking them, okay, what does this feel? Should we add this? Should we add this? But you can. Just not a very deep trance because it's really participatory.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I love doing this when my clients are already a little bit used to me and things. So they're already used to closing their eyes and just being there. You know, you want them to be able to do that. If it's a newer client, you might need them first to relax and then take yourself back to one of those moments, be there, see what you see, you know, and maybe it'll take a little longer because they're not used to imagining themselves, you know, going back to a moment, to memory.
So just discernment for the client, really.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I found that the instant that someone imagines something, they're in trance.
Yeah. And I'll notice, you know, if you have a client that's very heady, you know, they're like, oh, well, what he did was that, now, you know, you're noticing they're not there, you know, and you want them to be imagining they are there right now because you want to really test how does the body respond, how do they respond, how are their feelings. So someone heady, I'll put them in trance always, and someone who's very creative, they just need to close their eyes and that's it.
I have a question about working with people who are on anti-anxiety medication. So people who have chronic illness and stress are, you know, a certain percentage are probably on these. And it seems like it's a little bit different. You know, they're not really traveling in time because these medications seem to keep them in a safe place.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wonder what your experience is, because I know you work a lot with medical
situations. So I always find out what they're taking just so that I know, but I don't even suggest anything like take it off or da-da. We're
Right.
still doing the same work. What I will notice is after a while they ask about it and they say, do you think it's a good idea if I wean myself off? And I say, there's a lot of side effects to weaning off. You'll actually have that sympathetic nervous response really quick because your body's used to doesn't create the hormones anymore. You know, it depends on the medication to do so. So we always make sure that they're doing it extremely slow and with a, you know, psychiatrist and their doctor, because it takes a very long time. And a lot of people are on these meds for 12 years, you know, and so it could be a year that they wean off.
But do you use different words or you just do the same thing?
I do pretty much the same thing. I do. I mean, you might go more into trance. You might really get them to drop in a bit more. They might not feel the highs or the lows as much, but they still can build these resources.
Oh, good. Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to get back to my PowerPoint, which keeps me on track. Oh, look at my PowerPoint. It changed. Just a second. Where am I at? All right. There we go, hopefully. All right. So we looked at the first part, the perception, and having a little space will create a perception of not having to react all the time so quickly. The other area to really look at is negative thoughts. You know, I had one client, his thought always when he's about to do something is always, this is going to be painful. So how do you think his body responds, right? There's that anticipatory stress. Or the what ifs. Well, what if the project doesn't go right? What if I don't have paper? What if I run out of this? What if they don't like it? What if they, and so those are areas, or the I should haves, right? A lot of stress and your own expectations of what you should be doing. So with, for example, the what ifs, I remember with one client, it was really clear. She does a lot of what ifs. She has Parkinson's, and with Parkinson's, there's a lot of fear. And the what ifs is like, well, I mean, were tremendous, right? Well, what if this, and then, you know, the world was going to just self-destruct. And I asked her, she was a project manager. And I said, well, if you're going to finish a project, or if you're doing a project, Are you thinking about what if I run out of paper in the printer be a good way to organize the project for success? And she's like, well, no. And I said, well, if you're what ifing, you're not taking action. You're actually putting yourself into what happens if I didn't take the action, right? You're putting yourself back into the end of a bad end, right? And so thinking about what if I run out of paper is not going to help. But and I said, so what is another question you can ask yourself to prepare better? And she said, well, I would maybe ask myself, how can I make sure I have all the materials I need? It's like, okay, that's a different question. So one of the things you can do with them, again, in trance, out of trance, is really help them establish a new, what's called a virtual question or unconscious question. Anytime we're doing something, even anytime we enter a room, there's actually a question going on in our heads. If the question are they going to like me? That's a yes, no question. It is not in your control. But if the question in your head when you enter a room is, how can I collaborate and have fun with this? All of a sudden, your mind is thinking about all the different things you can do to contribute. So always look at what questions are they asking themselves and work with them to find questions that will put them into control and into action. Another thing about negative thoughts is, I remember one of my clients, she was an artist, a known artist in her field, and she was having a lot of trouble completing a project and publishing it. And so we kind of, I had her close her eyes and kind of be there. She's doing a project, and I was like, okay, what's happening? And what we notice is that while she's doing the project, she has the entire world on her shoulders looking down saying, she passed her prime. This is not good. She's too old for this. She should probably just retire. And so when you've got that critical inner voices judging you, all of that increases stress and makes it very difficult to finish anything as well. Also, you'll have, for example, one of my clients had what she named Cruella de Vil, right, in her head. What do you think Cruella de Vil is telling you at all times, right? Are you sure that's right? Are you sure that's the right answer? Are you sure they're going to like that? Again, it just made her block, right, and freeze. Can you guys think of some ways to work with these negative thoughts and inner critics? What would you use?
I would, oh, go ahead. Is somebody saying something?
Sandra, it's just you. You can go ahead. Sandra Guasi.
Okay, sorry. I thought
I talk to them.
Uh-huh. You talk to the voice.
well, there is something going on here. I don't know if it's me or the person saying, but I would use this. It's more a Gestalt technique.
Yeah.
And I would ask the person to be that voice and talk to that voice, because there is something behind that,
Yeah. Good. Anyone else have any thoughts?
I work with clients with this, and I introduce them first to the critic, the inner critic, and we kind of establish the age of the inner critic, because oftentimes it's very young. And if it's an older voice, it's usually an inherited voice that's not theirs.
Yeah.
And then I help them create a new rule to work with the inner critic. And the first rule is, think of somebody you would never, ever, ever talk like that to in your life, because you love and respect them so much. Mm-hmm. And the rule is, if you can't say it to them, you can't say it to yourself. And that you're going to notice now when that inner voice comes up, and you're going to stop and take care of its real needs find out what it really needs, and help it work through a more positive way of voicing that need.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. Yeah. Doing Gestalt, talking to the inner critic, finding out its needs. Perfect.
Yeah.
Also, there's some studies done that actually words of affirmation have an effect on that negativity. And so counterbalancing that negativity with hypnosis that has words that really speak to them, right? Or, for example, rather than doing regression therapy to negative cause, you can do regression therapy to all those wonderful moments when people, others, you know, your family, your mother, friends, your teachers said really thoughtful, deep words about you, right? Like, you were amazing, you're so good at this, and collecting all of those in a trance, right? And then maybe wrapping them into that boundary we created. There's also a great book called, let me unshare for a second, called Transforming Negative Self-Talk. It's a cute little book. It's not very big. It just has a whole bunch of different ways. It's from Steve Andreas, to practical ways to work on that negative self-talk. One of the things he suggests, and I think it was Diana said, is to find out who is that voice. Because I always say there's not a single, you know, phrase in your head that is original. We pick them up as we grow up, right? Which is why 3-year-olds sometimes they'll have this phrase and you're like, where did you pick that up from, right? It's because they pick it up. And so the thing is, we swallow these things whole, and then we give it back to ourselves, right? And so I'll have a client, you know, one of my clients was like, she had a voice that was always like, are you sure that's right? Are you sure that's the correct answer? And it really, guess she was a perfectionist, right? And when she closed her eyes and listened to that voice with curiosity, and I just noticed, you know, what face would match that voice? Who could that be? It was actually a math teacher from 3rd grade. And so she'd spent now 20, 30 years with this 3rd grade math teacher in her head anytime she was doing a project, right? And so what Steve Andreas always proposes is you want to make the minimum change to create the maximum difference. That way it's not hard work. It's not hard practice. And so what he talks about is only changing the tone, not even what the person is saying. So for example, if this client changes from this math teacher to Bugs Bunny, and Bugs Bunny's like, nah, you know, are you sure that's right? You know, it's like, it's senseless. You're like, leave me alone, you know, it's not like you do anything, right? And it will break that emotional and, you know, that reaction and response to it.
So we have a comment in the chat. It's from Amanda. She says she loves the idea of establishing the age of the inner critic, as well as identifying its own voice.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There's a lot of different ways, even changing the tempo. For example, at a client that's always like, oh my gosh, you're gonna be late. Oh my gosh, you're gonna be late. You know, that oh my gosh was what got her body into zoop, you know, and so we just changed the tempo. And so now when she's driving, she's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be late. And that way, the body is not responding to it. And so she's able to stay more centered and address the issue that she's not going to make it. Nancy, you had a question or you had an observation?
Well, I have a pretty easy way of clearing those, I think, is that I have them repeat that negative thought. And then I might say, if I don't think it's really the core, I say, and what are the next words after that? Repeat those. And then the next words after that. And then I ask, if someone's voice was saying those words, would it be a male or a female? And they'll answer right away. And I say, so then that's not really your thought, is it? you know, and then to like, so what's the truth about you? What's your real thought about yourself? And that seems to override, and then they can also use that technique themselves when they have negative self-thought. And I've used it for years and it seems to work really well.
Yeah, it's really great
Yeah.
because it's what happens is they take the phrase out of context. And what
Right.
you're doing is inviting them to add to the old context so they can see where it's coming from. And then it doesn't.
Well, it's part of that independent, you know, establishing your independence, where the people with ALS and MS, they don't have that independent self as a person. And so it helps to start to establish where we're where they're really coming from. And anyway, I hope that.
Good. Yeah, that's a great one. I will be using that.
So Eva, we have another question from Cheryl. She says, thank you for your work with PTSD. When we get to the PTSD area, I would love to get your perspectives and induction suggestions to help my clients, male and female, who have been sexually abused multiple times. Finally, the Me Too movement has opened the doors for all of us who have had to be silent to now heal and give back.
Yeah, I actually have a process I always do with PTSD, and we'll look at it briefly. It's a full process. Maybe one day I can teach it here at ACHE. But it is similar to what Nancy is saying. What happens when we have PTSD is that our minds kind of shorten and only keep the memory of the worst part. And that memory just gets looped only in that area. There's no time before, there's no time after. So part of the process is taking it out of the body, you know, that boundary. And so pulling it out. And the other part is actually to add what's happening in the front, what's happening in the left, to give them a lot more context. That's a part of that PTSD process, because the PTSD comes about with the looping that just keeps coming back. It's like, I always tell my clients, it's like their subconscious has something that's unresolved, and subconsciouses love to have things resolved and put into their little library. And so it's like, hey, what about this, you know, what do we do here? What do we do here? It seems unresolved. So you're actually going to resolve the issue of the past, but with the resources they have today as an adult. All right, so another area, just briefly, is when you're hearing their self-talk, one thing that happens is they take things personally. And I think someone mentioned that at the very start, right? However someone's doing something, it's all about them. And so having them become the other person and things to realize, oh, wait a minute, the other person's too busy. They're not even thinking about me, right? Or generalizing to their entire life. If I lose this job, my whole life is over. Right? If I don't get married by 30, my whole life is over, right? Or I have clients, of course, with chronic disease, and a lot of times there's this belief, there's this symptom, and it's like, oh my gosh, this will last forever. And so then they freak out, and then the symptom perception goes up, right? And it just gets worse. And so we need to look at those lasting forevers. We mentioned this already a little bit, the triggers. What happens is, let me move you guys out of the way. Our emotions are triggered by the recall of memories. I had the example of the guy in the elevator, but always it's like I have a bit of an aversion to heights. But if you think about what happens, and if I go back to that space, there's this feeling I can't get down. And that feeling, if someone actually took me into regression therapy, they would realize my sister was a lemur as a kid. And unfortunately, she got up many places. But then she stayed up there. And so I went up to try to get her down. And what would happen is we would be up a tree, we would be up a chapel tower, the bells, and we couldn't get down, right? And so anytime I'm in heights, unconsciously that memory, I can't get down, gets triggered. What do you think happens if we actually address those memories of the past? Do you think I'm going to have the same fear of heights, the same racing heart? So when it comes to memories being triggered, what methods can we use? What would you propose? I think mainly that regression therapy is definitely one, right? Even just timeline. Catherine, yeah.
That's what I was going to say. I use the affect bridge and get in touch with the feeling, let that feeling take them back to the first time that they had that same or similar feeling and go from there.
Yeah, perfect. Because then if you resolve that and make them resourceful there, it doesn't get re-triggered today. It's not the same feeling anymore. Another way I'll do it sometimes if we're already through half the session and and something comes up is I'll do what's called the quick and dirty method. And so if a feeling comes, I'll just say, all right, close your eyes and notice that feeling. Does it feel familiar? Or is it like new? You've never felt that before. And probably, 99 times out of 100, they'll tell you, oh, this is familiar, right? And even if I don't have much time, I'll say, okay, so name me 5 memories. Just let them kind of bubble up. 5 memories that have a familiar, just the same feeling. And you can just look at those with them and actually create a different response in those elements. So for example, one of my clients, when she would text somebody, if they didn't respond immediately, she would get this feeling they don't respect me and get this need like I have to control them. I have to control this, I'm alone, and all this story would happen. And so in the middle of a session, it was coming up and I said, okay, let's stop everything and name me 5 different incidents where you had that same feeling. I'm not very respected. And she named different ones, all from childhood. And one seemed like the main one, was that she was like 5 years old and she went into her father's study and she was so excited about something and wanted her father to work with her doing a puzzle. And her father was busy working. And her father said, no, not now, and kept working. And so she was wanting a response and he didn't respond. And that's when it kind of happened. And so then, of course, I had her become her father. I had her kind of see the whole thing. And then we talked to the inner child, right? And now when someone doesn't text, her immediate response is they must be busy, right? It's no longer about her. As I mentioned before, any kind of phobias, PTSD, you definitely want to address that because those are going to come up. That's why someone who has experienced PTSD will have a lot more issues with anxiety and have chronic anxiety, right? Because there are a lot of other triggers happening. It's like any noise will trigger those memories. All right. And now, when that has happened, which happens quite quickly, of course, you already have that physical and mental response of the body. The heart starts racing, and it's quite natural. I mean, right before this presentation, as I said right at the very beginning, my mouth was dry, my heart was racing. That's a natural response. And we want to help our clients and ourselves when that happens. And so we actually have 2 choices. We can actually help our clients go from that sympathetic, that first adrenaline response, go back into parasympathetic, back into the more calm, grounded response. Or we can take our clients from that first adrenaline response, but translate it into eustress, into positive stress, into joy or courage. So when something happens, for example, this presentation, instead of feeling threatened, I'm going to make, it's going to be embarrassing, et cetera, and then thinking of the worst case when I did a presentation and I lost my notes and I didn't know what I had to say next. I can take it into, ooh, my body is, preparing for action, and I can take it into positive, and I can do this. I'll figure this out, and this will be fun. Make sure they collaborate as much as possible, et cetera. So can you guys think of some ways and methods to use when you're already in it?
So really quick, Eva, Nancy says people who were premature and in incubators for a time seem to have particular triggers.
That might be one of the memories you need to work on for example. Yeah, one of the things, for example, there were some studies made with rats, this is psychoneuroimmunology, in which the rats that didn't receive at the beginning of their lives, cuddling, didn't receive the protection of a mother, had a much quicker response, sympathetic response. And those that had a loving mother rat had a much lower. They were much more able to respond and figure things out and not get overstressed and have all the corticoids and everything circulating. Again, I would go in regression back to that space and give that young preemie that love, that holding. I did actually have a client with anxiety. She was a preemie and she had some medical issues. And so they actually kept her for like 4 months. And that's definitely, you know, reacted because of that. And what we did is we had her mother and her go back to the doctor. This is in Germany. Go back to the doctor and say, no, it is not okay. It is not the best medical, you know, treatment to separate the mother from the child. And they actually had the doctor put in jail. This was all in, you know, in the trance session.
Wow.
And then they put a new doctor from the, you know, year 2000 rather than 1960s into that hospital to train all the nurses and all the doctors. And then she got to experience her mother getting to be by her side those 4 months. Her mother did not leave her side. And so then we did a recording even of that part of the experience.
That's great. I kind of find that those people are not as able to initiate and reach out and get something for themselves. They have been waiting for things to be brought to them, and that they respond to medical emergencies much more quickly, like you were saying, but they want to rely on doctors and medicine rather than their own innate healing abilities. I don't know if you've found that, but I've definitely.
Yeah, well, probably the majority of my clients that come in at first, they're like, okay, let's do this, you know, you're going to get rid of it for me. And it's like, no, you know, and they're looking for a quick fix because that's, you know, you're supposed to have a doctor who's going to give you a pill and make everything go away. We've all heard that, or the majority of us from our moms, at least I heard that all the time as I was being raised. So that's part of the education as well, is to help manage their expectations and what's going to happen. And I always tell them, well, if I fish for you, are you going to learn to fish? What happens next time? Right? And so I tell them, no, I'm building you. I want you to become a self-fisher. You know, I want you to be able to now and in the future, get yourself out of any problems, deal with whatever happens in life, and know that you can deal with whatever happens in life. And I say, your body will thank you for that.
It looks like Sandra Perez has a question.
Yeah.
Oh, you think? I don't know. I don't know what I pressed. But anyway, I work with a lot of kids and they wake up when like they refuse to go back. A lot of times they're really been abused. So they can't go back and hug themselves or anything like that when they're when I'm trying to regress them. So like they might have school phobias or reading phobias, and like they get a lot of anxiety when they go into the classroom. And so I'll have them, and they all usually really like sports. So I use sports a lot, like when they make a goal, and just hold on to that feeling of how much pride they have and how much adulation they got from the crowd, and take that to when they're opening their book.
Yeah.
And that,
perfect.
I find that works, but I have a really hard time getting them, even in hypnosis, to be able to go deep. And some of them do, you know, and I have a good experience with that, but it's hard. The kids,
Yeah.
I think, are harder than the adults sometimes.
It's
And they get really bored. you
It's a
know?
field. For kids, it's like having a client that already has a lot of training. Kids are great in imagination. So I'll just have them, close their eyes and be in a soccer game right now. And who's got the ball? And who's got the ball? And what does your referee look like? Is he tall? Is he short? It's actually not this deep, relaxation. It's an excitement of a child. And so
Yeah.
I don't use inductions with kids at all. And kids are different. Yeah, I don't regress them either. I just have them imagine things, and bring imaginary friends, to help them out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You want to build them up instead of resolving. They'll get to resolve all their parental issues when they get older. But yeah, what you said about the anchoring, there's one way, Helen Bremner, she's actually a teacher of IBS. And so she deals a lot with the stress part. What she does, which I love, is she does a quadruple induction. So, when you think you're already relaxed enough, she does another induction and you're like, oh my gosh. And then she takes you to a perfect place. She says it is a perfect place, perfect because you make it that way. It can be somewhere real or imagined or a combination of the two, but wherever you are, you feel wonderful. And then she has you really crank that up. And when you're in this experience of bliss, she has you anchor it, with your thumb, with your thumb and finger, or with a fist, or with your hand on your chest. And then when you're in that blissful state, she'll have you take that to different situations and notice how you can take this perfection to all of that. And then she'll have the homework that the client in their day-to-day will continue to do this before before a meeting, while they're having a conversation. One of my clients was actually he worked in a pharmacy company. He was a big CEO kind of guy, and his was this. And so he told me, like, after learning it, he comes back to the next session. He's like, Eva, I had this meeting with all these salespeople. He goes, they are vicious. They're like, sharks in these meetings. And he goes, and throughout the whole meeting, I had my hand in my pocket doing this thing, and I stayed calm. He goes, then I also had my boundary. His boundary was kind of a cocoon. And when things get too much out there, he will do like octopuses. He'll release that ink in his boundary. He goes, I released that ink. I couldn't see anything. I was in my little bubble. I had my relaxing space. Chill throughout. And I said, no, we will not change the rules. Da, da, da. And he goes, I was completely grounded. So that's another way. So I wanted to do one with everybody, which will be a nice way to also get your body kind of activated since we've been sitting here for a while, which is called the 6-second response. All right. And what we want to do is think of a situation that gets you kind of stressed. And it could be any situation. For example, someone cuts you off a little bit when you're driving, right? Or someone says something that causes you to get a little stressed, or you're pre-preparing for this session and you really need this 6-second response. Can you all think of something minor that kind of gets you a little nervous? Or when your spouse says, we need to talk, right? And you're like, oh no, what, right? Okay. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to explain it to you, and then we're all going to do it together. If you recall from the beginning, we talked about what happens in the body. So one of the things that happens is our heart rate gets accelerated. We're pulling in a lot more oxygen to prepare for action. And so we actually want to, and you'll notice when someone's really stressed, they're kind of hyperventilating. And when people hyperventilate, they breathe from the top half of the lungs. I'll have a client and I'll say, breathe deeply. They're like, and they're actually getting their whole upper body all stressed out. And so to counteract that, try this right now. Imagine breathing from the soles of your feet, pulling in the breath from the soles of your feet into your lungs. And notice what happens. Notice your shoulders. Notice especially your diaphragm. When you imagine kind of pulling it, it actually engages more the diaphragm. And that's the response opposite to stress, right? In which you're engaging your upper chest. Okay, now coming back, another thing that happens when we start getting into that stress response is our bodies tense, right? Our muscles tense. What is one of the strongest muscles of the body? The jaw. A lot of people with a lot of tension or anxiety have a lot of problems with jaws and a lot of problems with sleeping, you know, and they're grinding their teeth. So your jaw is a place of a lot of tension. Now imagine putting tension in your jaw. And now do that, getting a little tension in your jaw, like, wish you hadn't said that. And now smile. And notice what happens in the jaw when you smile. Smile. It's actually, well, I can't do it. Maybe some one of you guys can. It's actually almost impossible to have tension in the jaw when you're smiling. It pulls a different set of muscles, tendons actually. And so that's another way to help start releasing that stress response. Now we're going to go even further. So 6 seconds. So we're going to take a lot, we're going to do a lot of things which are opposite to the stress response. Another thing I mentioned at the very, very beginning is when we have that stress response, that first adrenaline kick, we actually get focused. It's like when someone has had an accident and you talk to them about it, they don't remember anything, just that telephone pole kind of thing, right? So it's actually your eyes just completely narrow in on one thing. So to create the opposite, we want to relax the eyes. Now, if I tell you relax the eyes, you might think, okay, well, how am I going to relax? But if I tell you now, narrow in your focus right now to maybe one little point on your computer, really narrow it in. And now imagine adding sparklies to the center of your eyes and now spreading those sparklies all the way through, 180 degrees all around. So you have these, it's like happy eyes, sparkly happy eyes. And again, like the smile, it's kind of a way to even, if you think about sparklies, it's like, you're almost trying to distract your eye. Look at the birdie, look at the birdie, look at the sparklies, right? You're kind of helping to open up from that narrow focus outwards. And another thing we talked about at the beginning is one of the things that can really trigger someone are those negative thoughts. So what is the opposite of a negative thought? A positive thought, right? Some sort of positive, repetitive thing that you can tell yourself, like a mantra, right? So think about, I got this, right? Or I'm good. Or mind alert, body relaxed, right? Or when I do this, I really look at a couple of situations with my clients and go, if that moment, if your parental figure came in or a mentor came in, what would you want to hear from them? And that's usually the best mantra for them. We all can get really spiritual, like, but it's like you're really talking to that inner child. That inner child usually just wants to go, you're okay. Everything's going to be okay. Or any of those. So because we're going to do this all together, can everybody think of, or maybe just adapt one of these mantras? And just kind of nod your head, the few I have. Do you have a mantra you can think of that you want to use? All right, I got some nods. Okay, and do you all have a situation that makes you guys nervous? I got some nods, Okay. We're going to do the standing up just to engage the whole body and to wake us up a little bit at the same time, if you can. All right. So first we're going to practice all the pieces that we're going to do. And I kind of have it, I do it in a way that's easy to remember. And then we're going to step into a situation. Well, first, even before, kind of step into your situation. Kind of imagine it's in front of you and step into the situation. If it's driving and someone did, or a phrase, you kind of want to set it up. And once you have it, then step out, shake that out for a moment. Look for something pink in your room. We're doing good. All right, and then step back into your situation and see what you see, hear what you hear, you know, and just notice that, oh, I hate when this happens. And then step out. All right, usually with the client, I'll have them do it at least 3 times just to get it right there, right? But you guys are professionals, so I think you guys have it. Now, we're going to do a little training right here, and then we're going to step into that situation, and we're going to take this 6-second response with us. So we're going to go slowly through the 6-second response, all the little pieces I kind of explained to you. You're going to begin at your feet, and you're going to slowly go up. So start with breathing in as if you were breathing through holes under your feet. As that breath comes in, smile. As it continues to fill your body, get those twinkling eyes going. And then your mantra. For example, I got this. Then shake that out and we'll do it again. Yeah, here we go. Right here, pull in the breath from the soles of your feet. As that breath comes in, you smile, your eyes twinkle, and you've got your mantra, I got this. All right, so we're going to go down, smile, eyes, mantra. Okay, now here we go. What we're going to do is in a moment, we're going to step into the situation that caused us the stress. And the minute we step in and we notice what's happening around us, breathe from the soles of your feet, smile, eyes, mantra. Here we go. Step in fully into the situation. Notice what's happening around you. Oh, God, breathe in. Smile, twinkle, I got this, whatever your mantra is. And notice how you are. Notice how you respond, and then step out again. And shake that out. That's the first time. What is the best way to become efficient? Practice. Ready? If you want to practice here before you step back in, again, breathe through the soles of your feet. As that breath comes into the body, you smile, you put the twinkle, and as you breathe out, I don't know if you guys have ever learned in hypnosis, the best way to trance somebody and to give them suggestions is in their out breath. So as you're breathing out, that's when you say your mantra. So as you're breathing in, you're actually relaxing all those muscles, and as you breathe out, you say your mantra. Okay, ready? Step into your situation. Breathe in through the soles of your feet. Smile, eyes twinkle. And in the out breath, say your mantra. And then stay there for a moment. Notice how you respond now to that situation. And then step back. All right. And we'll do one more. Imagine another situation that you might want to plant over there. And you can just do the same thing again. Again, think of something similar or something else and do that same thing. And then step out. If you were my client, I would have you test it in several situations, at least 3 in the past and 3 in the future. Make sure you got this. Make sure your subconscious has this, which is the one that you want to train. Isn't a mental exercise. It's a subconscious response. And then what I always tell my clients is practice this insistently. Use this for the next week, As if, you know, as if when you're wanting to learn to drive a car, if you only try to learn to drive a car Saturday mornings, how long is it going to take you to become really good, right? And unconsciously good at it. But if anytime you go out, you're like, I need the keys, I want to drive, right? You can become good by insisting and practicing every opportunity you have. And in about a week, you can be a pretty good driver. The same thing with these kind of exercises. Use them everywhere. Every time you step out of a room, every time you get into the car, every time you leave the car, every time you go into a meeting, every time you get into bed. Yeah.
Okay. So Nancy Epstein says it's a great exercise and she can feel the difference with the mantra on the exhale.
Yeah. It could definitely make your hypnosis much more powerful if, as you're giving your clients suggestions, give it to them in the out breath. That's when they're open. In breath, there's a little more tension going.
We do have a question from Nancy Brown, it looks like. No, Nancy, you had your hand up? Nope. Okay.
All right. Okay. So let me just share my screen once again. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so we just did the 6-second response, breathing through the holes of your feet, the smile, the twinkle, and then out breath, the empowering mantra. As well, remember, and I mentioned this, that it's the response to a threat that is detrimental to the body. It's the gripping, it's more that tension. Your arteries actually kind of get tight as well. But in those moments in which your body prepares you for action, things begin to get more energy. If you actually take it towards, oh, cool, this will be fun, or towards, this is a challenge and I can, you know, do this. There's actually been studies showing you, and here I have an example of a TED Talk, which is called How to Make Stress Your Friend, in which she talks about those people that actually find stress to be exciting or a positive challenge, or that when their body starts racing, their heart starts racing, it's actually great because their body's helping them prepare. The physiological changes are actually positive in the body. The arteries actually open up rather than contract. And so one of the things you could do is help rephrase and help them actually see challenges as exciting. Like, ooh, I wonder what's going to happen, right? Imagine with COVID responding like, ooh, this should be interesting. This will be interesting spring. I know I'm going to remember this. I'll have stories to tell rather than, oh my God, I can't do anything I wanted to do, and da-da-da, right? Yeah. So this would be the stress response of a good challenge or courage. Arteries actually stay open, allowing the maximum flow of blood. It actually helps age. And studies have been shown that the brain volume doesn't decrease as much. Attention stays open, you're ready to engage, you actually improve your performance. The other three, you can take them off. That was from the other presentation. Those are not in there. But yes, it's actually more of a parasympathetic response. And you do have concentration. This needs to be corrected. All right, so if we look at it in the same way as we saw that previous chart, we're perceiving the issue as a good challenge. We have exciting thoughts, positive thoughts. This should be interesting. Oh, cool. You know, oh, this will be great. And it triggers, again, this time it triggers resourceful memories. And that in turn gives us the physical and the psychological response that is good for our health, even improves our health. All right, so the last one, chronic disease. When we don't use that stress product, right? All that accumulation of action, but instead grin and bear situations. What can result is illness and disease. So in this case, we're going to review a session, we'll review a demo. I think we have enough time to see, let's say, the meat of a demo. I actually have a demo recorded just to get a sense. What our target here is, we're actually going to use the chronic disease to find out, we're going to go backwards, right? We want to use the chronic disease to find out what is that stress path. What are the emotions? What are the memories? What are the self-talks? What is the perceptions? And we can actually use the disease and talk to the disease to find out what they are. And sometimes the client will be like, oh, okay, yeah, I thought about that. And sometimes the clients are really surprised. I had one I talked to not recently who always has recurrent UTIs. And when we talked to her UTI, it was an old man. And then after a while, she realized this old man was her father, who's already deceased. And the old man said, you still have so much accumulated anger to me. And so she was like, oh, really? That's what's, you know, and so then I knew, okay, that's what we need to work on in the next sessions. We need to give her outlets for her anger, and we need to work on forgiving her father. So before we do that, any questions? We're going to get into a demo. I have a recorded demo and really get into the meat of discovering through the chronic disease what the stressors are. All right, let's get into the nitty gritty. So in your handouts, it's the last page. A lot of times when a client comes in with chronic disease, they have no awareness of what the stressors were. Sometimes you can ask them what was happening 3 or 6 months before, and you can get several areas that, you know, get an inkling of what things you have to work on. But as I mentioned before, chronic disease is something that develops in time. And most cases, it's not only what was happening the 3 or 6 months before they get their first exacerbation, before they recognize they have disease. Many times it's coming in from their 20s and from childhood. And so it's, if you guys ever heard this, I don't know where I heard this. This is a terrible example, but it stays in my head always. If you want to cook a frog, the best way to do it is put them in water, cold water, and then slowly increase the temperature. Because if it's really, really slow, the frog won't notice it until it's too late. We have the same thing. You know, if you try to put a frog in warm water, it'll go boom, and it'll just jump out, right? We have the same thing. It's like our stressors or the ways of being that don't help us, they slowly come into our lives and slowly increase to a moment that we're not even aware of it. So one of the things a lot of my clients will say after we've been working for a while is, wow, it's so silent inside here. I used to have this humming. They had so much chronic stress, they could almost hear that accumulated bzzz, you know, of that sympathetic nervous system. They can feel and hear, but they didn't even know that was there until it was no longer there. All right, so let's get into the nitty gritty. So what I do in this session is I always do a relaxing induction. If you think about stress, just the relaxing induction is such a pleasure. It feeds their bodies, right? Their bodies are so tense. It's like, give them that gift, right? Yes, we can do a 5 minutes induction, but half of their problem is that they don't give themselves time. So I give them a nice relaxing induction, and then I'll have 2 ways. One, the typical way we do with regression, which is kind of going down a staircase, and there'll be a door. At the other side of the door will be, you know, that past life or that memory or that time when you last felt, or 10 to 1, you know, go back to the memory. It's similar, But this time, rather than saying go back to a memory, you're going to say, you know, we're going to go into your bladder, you know, and in there, there'll be messages for you. We don't exactly know, but there's, you know, your body's been communicating all this time. Or the way I did here in this demo, and I'll use for clients that are less you know, who aren't hypnotists or don't do meditations, it's kind of a gestalt. Someone here mentioned gestalt. We're going to have them become the disease. But what I do is I will have them go into a safe place. You know, they get to choose what that is. And then I will say, okay, in a moment, we're going to invite a representation, kind of like a guest, you know. It could be a person, it could be a thing, it could be a color, it can be sound, it can be in past memory. We don't exactly know, but we know that your subconscious is very willing to communicate. And so we set it up, and then we'll do a gestalt with whatever comes in. And we'll actually have the client become the disease. I mean, it has come in as a blue couch, as a zebra, as a winking fox, all sorts of different things. And we'll have them become that representation and ask questions. And these are the questions here that I use, which will help us recognize what are the stressors and what is the purpose of the disease. All right, so we'll listen to a part of it. We won't be able to listen to most of it, but we'll listen to the, you know, the core of the session, and then wrap up what we've done and our new stress management toolkit, and then any additional questions. All right, so here you guys see my screen, me without bangs. Is that visible? Okay, so I've already done the induction. I've just started getting him into his safe place to invite the disease.
Is to relax deeply as you listen to my voice.
This is a student from one of my classes.
I want you to imagine yourself in Yosemite. Imagine yourself floating down the Merced.
That's his safe place.
With the forest around you, the atmosphere. Noticing the trees, nature, the movement of the river under you. Just relaxing in your safe place.
And now look at the notes.
And in a moment, not now, as you just relax, noticing the sky, perhaps even the sounds around you and beneath you. But in a moment, we're going to invite someone here, a guest. Not right now. Right now, just enjoying your place.
I'm setting this up in a way to kind of tell the subconscious, this is what I'm expecting.
We'll invite a guest that will be a representation of that diabetes. And when we invite that guest in, I want you to notice everything about that guest. And your subconscious will form this guest in whatever way it feels is best for you. It can be a person, a symbol, a sound. It can be a past memory. We don't exactly know, but we do know that there's a deep willingness to communicate. And here's a moment for you to deeply understand what your diabetes has been communicating to you all this time. All right. So invite your subconscious to create that representation. Just allow that guest to enter. Let it be seen and heard. Get a sense of it. Just hold that intention that you are welcoming that diabetes.
Always train your clients not to try too hard, you know.
And when it arrives, just let me know by nodding your head. Just holding that intention, nothing else you need to do. Yeah, there it is. Good. Now, what kind of form does it take?
I tried to get rid of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't want it.
Yeah.
When you know they're quite impressed or startled or
still
wanting to
there
get
with
rid of
you?
it, you know it's the subconscious bringing
Yeah.
it in and not themselves trying to do the session.
Yeah.
Smiling that I couldn't get rid of it.
Yeah.
A big
What kind
bear
of
on
form
his
does it
canoe.
take?
It was a humongous, big black bear that could never float down the Merced with me.
Ah,
Wouldn't fit on the raft.
yeah.
There wasn't a raft big enough for this.
Yeah. There's nothing big enough for this big, humongous black bear, and it's just smiling at you.
Mm-hmm.
What else do you notice about the way it looks or the way it behaves?
Oh, it's humongously huge. Fills the space.
Yeah.
Can't see anything else but the bear.
Yeah.
Even though there's other things around, it's in my face.
Yes, exactly. That's all you see is just this big, huge bear that fills the space.
Yeah, it's like he hijacked all my attention.
Yes. All your attention is there. Yeah.
I tried to shove him away and turn him into a porpoise or something else.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so in a moment, I'm going to count from 1 to 3. And when I reach 3, I'm going to snap my fingers and I want you to become this enormous black bear there. 1, 2, and 3. Just feel yourself becoming this enormous black bear. Smiling there. All your presence. Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now that he's become the bear, I can ask.
What is it
directly
like to be
questions.
you, Bear?
You said it. I am enormous.
You're enormous. Yeah.
Muscular, big claws, big footprints.
Yeah.
It isn't just Craig. Anybody that I confront, we can't see anything else but me.
Yes.
Power.
You're powerful. What's important about that? What's important about them just seeing you? That's all you want them to take on is you.
I like the attention.
Ah. You like the attention.
Power. It's not just the size and the claws. It's the notice that I get.
Nah.
I cannot be denied.
Yeah. Because if you get noticed, if you get that attention, what does that do for you? What's important about that?
I've never been asked that.
Mm-hmm.
A little disconcerting.
Mm.
It's kind of beyond the brain of a bear.
All right. You just want the attention. No denying it.
Yeah. The power, the attention. I mean, I move things. I'm muscular. I don't get shoved around. I shove around.
Yeah, you shove. You're the shover.
Sometimes the chronic disease will come in as the problem, and sometimes the chronic disease will come in as the solution. So just kind of be aware that this bear might be the solution that he needs to his diabetes.
Children scream.
Yeah. You enjoy that, don't you? Yeah, Greg screamed too.
Yeah, when they fight against me, you know, they hit me, and it's like, you know, tiny little puffballs. I'm just rock solid. I like being powerful.
Strong boundary there.
How does your power serve them? See, look at Craig there, scared of you and in awe. Just hold that question until the answer comes. How does your power bear? So,
How does my power serve Craig?
yeah, and all those people there.
Well, the strange thought was that it's shareable.
Ah,
I can
yeah,
share it.
yeah.
Nobody asked me to because they want to run away.
No,
But
exactly.
the power is available
Yeah,
to be shared.
yeah.
I'm not selfish.
No, you're big, you're powerful, but you're not selfish about your power.
Right. They're always afraid of me and run away. But
Exactly.
my power is kind of an invitation to share, but nobody wants to take the invitation.
Yeah, because if you were able to share it with them and they were actually able to be there, notice you, and receive from you that power, what would they realize?
They're bears too.
Oh, yeah,
They just don't know it.
yeah.
Later in the other next sessions, we really explored that. And there was a lot about, I can't be my full self. You know, I have to act small. I have to be small.
If they became the bear too, what would that give them that they don't have now?
Well, the first obvious thing is power.
Yeah.
But the subtle thing is, it's almost like, or maybe it is like, it turns them from being a wimpy scaredy cat into somebody that can just stand and have power and face anything.
Yeah. What are they believing?
Oh, that I'm a bully and that they aren't strong enough to.
Yeah. They don't believe they're strong. They believe they're wimpy, scaredy cats.
They're victims.
They're victims. They don't realize they can be a bear, huh?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
The weird thing is that I came from inside of them, so
Yeah.
they have it, they just don't know it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. How long have you been with them? How long have they been bears?
Oh, that is funny question, because I just saw my mother trying to give birth to a big bear, and that just trying to go that far back.
Yeah.
It looks like it's even before that. It looks like.
Yeah, even mother was already having that bear there present. Yeah. I'm going to ask you a question, Bear, and let me know. Just let the question sink in and let me know if the answer comes. When did Craig forget he was a bear?
Oh, 1, 2.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Early on.
Yeah. What do you want to tell that little kid?
Stop being a scaredy cat.
Yeah. What is he? Yeah.
He was At first, he was just a boy that wanted to play all day, and that was his life. And then
Yeah.
he got scared
Yeah.
and didn't know how to fight and stand up, so he just ran away and hid.
Yes.
So that's telling me in the next sessions to explore that age of 2 and 3, see what happened that changed his perceptions and made him a scared little boy rather than a playful little boy.
He did.
Still is.
Yeah. He doesn't realize he knows how to fight. He runs away.
Right.
And hides.
Nobody ever taught him how to fight. He thought somebody had to teach him.
Yeah.
All he had to do was check inside. I was there.
Yeah. Where are you in his body?
Oh. I kind of live in the belly and the chest, but you know, I'm actually from the tippy tip toes all the way through to the top of his head.
Mm-hmm.
Like I am like all immersed throughout his entire body. There isn't any place he can touch or somebody else can touch, but well, I'm not touched. I'm there.
Yep. Every single part of him is bareness.
Yeah, it's like if I had a name, it would be universal.
You are a universal presence. Universal bareness.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Bear, how do you want us to call you? Do you want us to call you Bear, or do you have a name you prefer that Craig calls you?
Mm.
You always want to get a new name because the word diabetes has a lot of weight for any of their chronic disease. So having a name makes things easier for them. And it doesn't become them, it becomes part of them they're dealing with, right? Persona.
A name that will help them understand your Bear strength and power.
I don't know that it's the name, it's just my characteristic. Just call me Power.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Power. Thank you for that. And so, Power, I have a question.
Oh, that is funny. Something else just came.
Uh-huh.
So I have paws.
Uh-huh.
I'm a grandfather, and my brain, or Craig's brain, I can't really tell whose brain, it goes wacky. And I am like the grandpa, and that is so funny.
Yes.
But I'm the grandpa.
You are the grandpa. Yep.
The grandpa of Power.
Grandpa Power.
Oh, grandpa.
You are the
And
grandpa.
the picture is a humongous bear's paw with claws, bigger than any that's ever been seen.
Yep. Yeah.
Think of that analogy. It's a bear, which should be something scary, but it's a grandpa, which is the most loving being of a family. So the subconscious is wrapping those two together.
I'm the grandest paw of all.
You are. So grandest paw of all.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for you. How does that diabetes thing that Craig is dealing with, how is it serving him?
Well, he still gets to run away and hide.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
doesn't have to stand in his power. He just has to run away.
Yeah. And what is his body really wanting him to do? What does his body want him to learn?
Hmm. That I'm inside and I can help.
Yep. Yep.
Instead of running away, why not run inside and look around?
Yeah, because if he runs inside and looks around, what is he going to find?
Yosemite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Instead.
And when he finds Yosemite rather than, running, what is that going to give him that he doesn't have now?
The biggest floating bear down the Merced that he's ever seen.
Yes.
Like a friend, a companion.
Yeah. A friend.
I'm like, if he were to do that, I'm like the Goliath of strength that he runs away from.
Yeah. When he runs, he actually leaves his own strength.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, Grandpa,
Yes.
what would you want Craig to do less of?
Well, my first thought was eat, but then that was sort of funny. That was more of a joke. You see less of.
Yeah, just hold that, Grandpa. As you watch Craig and how he wants to run. And
less of being afraid of people.
Yeah.
Find a way to really be him. I don't know that it's never been okay for Craig to be Craig.
Yeah.
Anytime he's tried to be himself, people scatter.
Yeah.
Some people.
What do you want to tell him about that, Grandpa? He feels that if he is himself, people will scatter. What do you want him to know?
The ones that don't are worth talking to. They're looking for a grandpa. They're looking for power.
Yeah.
The others all have their turn. I mean, just because people run away doesn't mean they won't come back.
Yeah.
They won't come back.
Yeah. He might come back. Yeah.
And if they don't, there's a lot of people.
Yeah. There's a lot of people. So you want him to be less afraid of people and really be himself.
Right.
If he really becomes himself, what is he going to learn?
There are so many talents, I can't list them all.
Yeah. Yeah. What kind of talents does he still have to discover?
Better father, grandfather, great-grandfather, son, husband, all the family stuff.
Yeah.
He thought he had it all together, he doesn't. And then, healer, avant-garde, whatever you call that stuff, the person out in front.
Mm-hmm.
The person that's willing to be embarrassed.
Yeah.
Really ready to say what he thinks, and people might make fun, especially if it's outside what everybody knows.
Yeah. He has the ability to be up in the front, the avant-garde, to say what he thinks.
Right.
Yeah. He just needs to be himself, and he'll discover he has that talent. Yeah.
Some of the stuff looks like, I just looked to see what that would be like. It looks like miracles.
Yes.
Some of the things that I've seen look like miracles.
Yep.
I'd call him the potential miracle maker.
Yeah. He's the potential miracle maker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't fit any known patterns.
Yep.
Just out of the blue.
Just out of the blue. Potential miracle worker. Maker. Yep. Yeah. And
I always repeat what they're saying because half the time they don't hear themselves. And at the very end of the session, I repeat everything they said because usually they're quite surprised that I said all that.
what do you want him to do more of?
As you notice, I said, what do you want them to do less of? What do you want to do more of? Because that'll help you detect the behaviors. So one of the behaviors is he can't be himself. So that's an area. Now we want to see what he wants to do more of.
Oh, it's like, okay, so what he does is he thinks of something, he puts his toe in the water, never really jumps in, and then he has 15,000 lakes with toes in the water, but he hasn't swum in any of them. I want him to jump in. I want him to not even put his toe in the water. I want him just to get a thought, an impression that he knows is true, and just go do it.
Yeah.
It's scary because it might be in front of 5 people or 10 people, or people might be watching. So he's still the same scaredy cat he was. He's still running.
Yeah. So, Grandpa, what will help him jump in? Well, what does he need to know?
He could jump on my back and I'd jump.
Yeah, he can jump on your back.
He could use my power.
Yeah. No problem.
Or he could stand on the edge and I'd come running and I'd grab him and we just walk.
Yeah, he doesn't have to do it alone. He's got you.
Learn
You are the most humongous paw out there. Yeah. You just want him to go in.
He would actually do a miraculous transformation into being a bear himself. He'd grow his own claws,
Yeah.
his own paws, his own snout and fur and tail. Wouldn't need me anymore.
Yeah.
But I'm always there.
Yeah. Know that you are always there. He's growing into a bear, but he can know that he's got Grandpa right there with him all the time.
You know what's funny? Everybody has me in them.
Yeah.
That's what's funny.
You're so huge.
I'm so big, I'm not just related to Craig.
Yeah, exactly. You are the power. Yeah. Yeah.
So then what you can do is also any of the situations or things that are happening in their lives, jobs, relationships, ask also the chronic disease, in this case, Grandpa, what is your opinion about his boss or his job or his relationship? And that again will give you more information or what are the struggles, what are the things to work on, or what are the behaviors he needs to do more of. And then afterwards, you can just kind of do a recording with all those messages. And in the following sessions, work on those areas. So in his case, work on what is happening that you stick your toe in but never get in, right? What does that look like? What are you saying to yourself? You know, because he's repressing his impulses, right? And so look at that. The I'm not allowed to be myself, where did that come from? Work on those. And those will give you all those elements and all the areas to work on and what are those stressors. Anyone have any questions? We kind of just looked at the, you know, the meat of a session, but just to give you another idea, I wanted to really just look at some extremely different methods to work with stress so you can see all the different areas that we can do.
So we had a couple of questions typed in. Amanda typed in, I find it fascinating that he's saying they when he references multiple diabetes people, or is this about him having more parts within to reference?
Yeah, it was interesting. Usually it's not, you know, the part will talk more about, you know, Craig this and Craig this. And in this case, it was always with reference to other people. All these issues are about him with others. I can't be myself with others. They are afraid of me, but they don't recognize their own power. So it was all about relationship conflicts. So in this case, it was literally other people.
Okay. And Nancy unmuted, so she has a question.
Yeah, I was curious about the recording. When do you do the recording and what do you include in it?
So in the recording, I record just the induction and the wonderful safe place. Then I stop the recording And we do all this piece of work. And as I'm writing notes the whole time, right? And so it says, you know, he doesn't step in, he doesn't jump in. And so I'm writing that down and I'm underlining. And then at the very end, I'll start the recording when I've finished asking the chronic disease, all the questions of where did you come from? When did you come in? What are your messages? How do you serve? What do you want them to do less or more of? When I finish that, so I have all this material, then I will start the recording and say, and now, more and more, now that you know that your power comes within, you just jump into things and you recognize that other people have just as much power and are just as capable of stepping into their power. And so you invite them by being that one which is so powerful, and it's safe and it's good and it's nourishing. And so then I'll kind of give all the messages that the chronic disease wants them to know, and I'll create a recording with it.
Oh, good. Good. So
And
then they get the,
yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, they get it. And then the next session we'll look at, hey, they talked about this, your toe. Do you recognize that? Where does that show up in your life? And that'll give us the areas. What I love about chronic disease is it says, work on this, 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 and this. You know, your clients, you know, I had a client with back pain. She was like, oh, I know this has to do with an issue I had when I was 4. And since then, and when we went to speak to her about her back pain was just like, you're never in the here and now. You're always in the next thing. And when you're in the middle of something you're enjoying, you're already thinking about what else do you have to do. And and you know, in the chronic, I can't remember what it came up as, but it was like, you need to just be in whatever you're enjoying until it's complete and then go to the next thing. And so it was like, oh, it's not about something that happened at 4. It's a way of being. And so that's the area we worked on.
Okay, good. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And Sandra says, did this client get better control of blood sugars?
So this client was a student. So we didn't then have the wonderful, you know, the ability to then do all those areas. But we did review with him in the next class, which is what I would do with all clients, is review, do you recognize where those areas show up? Because that will give you as the practitioner a guideline in, you know, where do I need to work? I always tell my clients that once we've spoken to their subconscious in trance, I now have 2 clients. I have what they want to do in the sessions, and I have what their subconscious says we have to do in the sessions. And so I'll make sure those things are being addressed. Yeah. So ultimately, what we've done is we've, you know, marked out all the areas where you can help a client reduce their stress response. And so now from that stress management toolkit, you not only have exercise and diet and meditation and reducing stimulants, but you can actually help your clients alter those perceptions, change the negative thoughts, resolve those memories that keep getting triggered and were, you know, unresolved, lower and teach them ways to lower those, the stress response when it does come in, and address, if they have a chronic disease, those specific stressful factors that brought it in, or was part of what has caused the chronic disease. All right, so my main goal here was just to give you all the possibilities that are available so that you can actually use the methods you have and then explore some of these with any of your clients that you notice have stress, anxiety, or are coming in with a chronic disease. So we have a few extra minutes. Yes, Nancy?
Let's see. Can you go back to that last slide? It had that list, which I don't see in the notes. Is it in the notes? Alter the perception. It's a really good list.
Yeah, so yeah, you can photograph this on your thing. If not,
I'll do that right now.
Guys,
okay.
Send to info@mindbasedhealing.org. I can send you guys this slideshow, which will give you the link.
Great. Thank you.
So it's, let me see. Yeah, so info@mindbasedhealing.org. Yeah, always until the very last minute, those slides have been changing until 5 minutes before the presentation. So that's why that one slide was incomplete and had parts of the stress instead of the eustress. I was like, oops, I didn't finish that. But yeah. All right. If any other questions, if not, I want to thank everyone for being here and letting me share.
Just one last comment from Nancy Epstein. Great webinar. Love that you gave so many client examples. You met your goal. I have more tools to use with my clients.
Thank you.
Thank you. I feel like I got a lot out of this today. I really appreciate all of the time and energy you put in. It was great.
Thank you. Anchor that in, anchor those positive affirmations in. I'll need them next time, right, for another presentation.
All right, you got a lot of people saying thank you. It was such a excellent presentation, great webinar. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. So,
my pleasure. I love this stuff.
From ACHE, Eva, thank you for coming and spending your Saturday with us. To all of you that are here and to everybody listening later on, thank you all for joining us and have a wonderful day.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye, everybody.